There was a time when Tobey Maguire was everywhere, on magazine covers, late-night talk shows, and movie posters that dominated city skylines. His face was synonymous with heroism, humility, and that iconic upside-down kiss that defined a generation. As the first modern Spider-Man, Tobey didn't just play Peter Parker, he was Peter Parker. Ordinary, vulnerable, kind, and quietly powerful. Kids idolized him, adults respected him, and Hollywood believed he was unstoppable. But then, almost as suddenly as he swung into fame, Tobey Maguire disappeared. One day he was headlining billion-dollar franchises, and the next, he was gone. No blockbusters, no red carpets, no interviews. His name faded from the spotlight, replaced by newer stars and younger superheroes. Fans started to wonder what really happened. Was it fame that broke him? Was it Hollywood politics, personal struggles, or something darker behind the scenes? For years, rumors swirled, feuds with directors, gambling controversies, burnout, and a reputation that quietly shut him out of the industry. Yet behind all the headlines and gossip lies a truth that's far more complex, and in many ways, far more human. Because Tobey Maguire's story isn't just about a fall from fame. It's about a man who walked away from the machine that made him. It's about ambition, identity, and the price of being Hollywood's first superhero icon in a world that quickly forgot how to treat its heroes. So what really happened to Tobey Maguire? Why did one of the biggest stars of the early 2000s vanish from the big screen? The truth, yes, as we'll uncover, is stranger, sadder, and more inspiring than anyone realized. Long before Tobey Maguire became Spider-Man, he was just another struggling kid in Los Angeles, trying to find his way in an industry that didn't care much for dreamers. Born in 1975 to parents who separated when he was very young, Tobey's childhood was marked by instability. His family moved often, sometimes living with relatives or friends to make ends meet. Acting wasn't a glamorous choice for him. It was survival. He once admitted that he only pursued drama class because his mother promised him $100 if he took it seriously. That $100 changed his life. Throughout the late 80s and early 90s, Tobey fought for every small role he could find. He appeared briefly in commercials, small TV shows, and movies that barely made a ripple. Casting directors often told him he wasn't leading man material, too quiet, too awkward, too plain. But that awkwardness would later become his greatest strength. His first real break came when he started landing roles in films like The Ice Storm, 1997, and Pleasantville, 1998. Critics began to notice his subtlety, his ability to express pain and depth without saying much. He wasn't flashy, he was real. And that quality set him apart in an era obsessed with action heroes and charm. Then came Spider-Man 2002, the role that would define not just his career, but an entire generation of superhero films. Director Sam Raimi saw something in Tobey that others didn't, a quiet sincerity, a vulnerability that made Peter Parker believable. Tobey wasn't just acting the part, he embodied it. When audiences saw him struggle, they saw themselves. The film was a cultural explosion. Overnight, Tobey Maguire became one of the most recognizable faces in the world. The trilogy went on to gross nearly $2.5 billion globally, cementing him as Hollywood royalty. But behind the fame and fortune, Tobey was cracking under pressure. The sudden shift from anonymity to superstardom was overwhelming for someone who'd spent most of his life keeping his head down. He struggled with fame's invasive nature, the cameras, the gossip, the expectations. Unlike many of his peers, Tobey was never comfortable with celebrity culture. He rarely attended parties, avoided interviews, and was known to keep his circle small. Co-stars described him as intense, private, and sometimes distant. He wasn't rude, just cautious. Fame made him retreat further into himself. There were also growing tensions behind the scenes. During the production of Spider-Man 2, reports surfaced that Tobey had developed back problems and nearly lost the role to Jake Gyllenhaal. Sony was reportedly frustrated with his demands, and rumors of him being difficult began circulating through Hollywood. Though he returned for Spider-Man 2 and delivered what many fans consider his best performance, his relationship with the studio became strained. Off-screen, Tobey began exploring new interests. He became fascinated with poker and started playing in underground high-stakes games that drew in celebrities, business tycoons, and billionaires. For a while, he was good, very good. But with poker came a darker side of Hollywood: greed, addiction, and controversy. Those games would later inspire the movie Molly's Game, where Tobey was depicted, under a different name, as a manipulative and ruthless player. By the time Spider-Man 3 hit theaters in 2007, things had changed. The movie made money, but it received mixed reviews, and fans criticized it for its overstuffed story. Behind the scenes, Tobey's relationship with Sam Raimi and the studio had grown tense. And when Spider-Man 4 was quietly canceled, Tobey's time as the world's favorite web-slinger came to an end. For most actors, that would have meant finding the next big role. But Tobey didn't chase it. He didn't jump into superhero sequels or romantic comedies. Instead, he pulled away, not just from the franchise, but from the spotlight itself. People thought he'd been pushed out. But in truth, Tobey Maguire was walking away, tired, disillusioned, and searching for something more meaningful than fame. When Tobey Maguire walked away from Spider-Man, many assumed it was just a short break, a few quiet years before his next big hit. But what most people didn't know was that the break wasn't part of a plan. It was the result of exhaustion, frustration, and a growing discomfort with the world he had spent years trying to conquer. Hollywood was obsessed with its new stars: Robert Downey Jr., Christian Bale, and later the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The superhero landscape that Tobey helped create suddenly moved on without him, but Tobey wasn't done making headlines. This time, for reasons far different from his acting. In the years following Spider-Man 3, Tobey became deeply involved in the world of high-stakes poker. What began as a casual pastime turned into a near obsession. He wasn't just playing for fun. He was playing for millions. The poker circles he moved in were secretive, elite, and exclusive. Billionaires, movie stars, and Wall Street power players gathered in hidden hotel rooms and private mansions to gamble fortunes in a single night. According to Molly Bloom, the real-life organizer of those infamous poker games and the inspiration for the movie, Molly's Game, Tobey Maguire was one of the most skilled, yet most ruthless players in the room. He was calm, analytical, and surprisingly cold when money was on the table. But his behavior in those games painted a different picture from the humble, soft-spoken image fans knew from his Peter Parker days. Bloom described him as brilliant but brutal, claiming that he could be condescending and controlling. One infamous story involved Tobey allegedly demanding Bloom bark like a seal for a $1,000 chip, a moment that, true or not, became a symbol of how fame and power had quietly changed him. The poker games eventually came under FBI investigation due to links with illegal betting operations. Tobey was never charged, but court documents revealed he had won large sums from players who were later accused of running Ponzi schemes. The scandal tarnished his image and made studios wary of working with him. Suddenly, the once-beloved Spider-Man was being whispered about in gossip circles, not for his films, but for his behavior. Meanwhile, Tobey's acting career slowed to a crawl. He appeared in smaller, quieter films like Brothers, 2009, a critically acclaimed drama where he delivered one of his best performances, and The Great Gatsby, 2013, where he played narrator Nick Carraway alongside Leonardo DiCaprio. Both roles showed that his talent hadn't faded, but the hunger for Hollywood spotlight was gone, and perhaps that was the point. Tobey didn't crave fame anymore. He craved peace. After years of headlines, studio pressure, and public judgment, he simply stepped out of the noise. He focused on producing films through his company, Material Pictures, and started spending more time with his family. Friends say he was done with being Tobey Maguire the star. He wanted to be Tobey Maguire the father, the thinker, the quiet observer, but the poker scandal had left its mark. The press painted him as arrogant, even cruel, a man who had lost touch with reality. For someone who valued privacy, that narrative was devastating. It wasn't that Tobey hated fame, he just hated what fame did to people. He once told a friend, "Hollywood gives you everything you want until you realize you don't need any of it." Behind the scenes, though he maintained a small circle of powerful friends, including Leonardo DiCaprio. The two had met as young struggling actors in the 1990s and remained close ever since. They formed part of a group the media once called the Pussy Posse, a controversial nickname from their wild early days in Hollywood. But while DiCaprio leaned deeper into superstardom, Tobey quietly withdrew, choosing a life outside the spotlight. Ironically, his distance from fame made him even more intriguing to fans. The mystery surrounding him, the man who gave up Hollywood, became part of his legend. And while some thought he was finished, Tobey was quietly plotting his return on his own terms. Because as strange as it sounds, Tobey Maguire didn't disappear. He simply started living a life that didn't need to be seen. But when he did, a new generation of superhero fans started to rediscover the original Spider-Man trilogy. Clips of Tobey's emotional performances flooded YouTube and TikTok. Memes turned his scenes into pop culture gold, and fans began demanding his return. "We want Tobey back," became a rallying cry on social media. And while the world thought he had retired for good, Tobey was quietly watching all of it unfold from the sidelines. Behind the scenes, Marvel Studios and Sony had begun developing a multiverse storyline, a cinematic experiment that would bring together different generations of Spider-Man actors. When producers first approached Tobey about reprising his role for Spider-Man No Way Home, 2021, he was hesitant. After all, it had been nearly 15 years since Spider-Man 3. He wasn't sure if he wanted to revisit that chapter of his life. The fame, the pressure, the expectations, he had left all that behind. But there was one thing that convinced him: the fans. According to insiders, Tobey's main condition for returning was simple. He didn't want to be the center of attention. He wanted his version of Peter Parker to represent something deeper, an older, wiser hero who had found peace after years of struggle. He wasn't coming back to prove anything. He was coming back to say goodbye properly. When No Way Home finally hit theaters, the response was unlike anything Hollywood had seen in years. The moment Tobey Maguire stepped out of that portal in his old Spider-Man suit, audiences around the world erupted in cheers and tears. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was redemption. For many, it felt like seeing an old friend return home after a long absence. What made Tobey's comeback so powerful wasn't just that he appeared. It was how he appeared. His Peter Parker was no longer the nervous, unsure kid from Queens. He was calm, centered, and wise. He spoke like someone who had lived through pain and found peace. When he looked at Tom Holland's Spider-Man, it felt like he was passing the torch, not just as a character, but as a man who understood the cost of being a hero, both on screen and off. Behind the scenes, the younger actors adored him. Tom Holland called Tobey's presence surreal and humbling, while Andrew Garfield described him as a brother. It was a rare Hollywood moment. 3. Generations of Spider-Man actors sharing the same screen, bridging 2 decades of storytelling. And at the heart of it all was Tobey, quiet, kind, and grateful to be there just one more time. After No Way Home, fans begged him to stay in the Marvel Universe, but Tobey didn't rush into anything. True to his nature, he returned to his private life, satisfied with what he'd done. He didn't need a sequel or another headline. He'd already said what he needed to say, not in words, but in presence. What few realize is that No Way Home wasn't just a return for Tobey Maguire the actor, it was closure for Tobey Maguire the person. It allowed him to reclaim the part of his legacy that had been overshadowed by gossip and scandal. It reminded the world that behind all the controversy was a gifted actor who gave everything to a role that changed cinema forever. And while Tobey didn't make a big public statement after the film's release, those close to him say he was deeply moved by the response. For someone who spent years feeling misunderstood, the love from fans meant more than any award. One insider revealed that after seeing the audience reaction, Tobey quietly said, "It feels good to be home again." But even after his triumphant return, Tobey didn't jump back into fame. Instead, he did something most stars never dare to do after such success. He disappeared again. This time, though, not out of frustration or rejection, but by choice. He had finally made peace with who he was. Still, the question remains, what is Tobey Maguire doing now? Why does he continue to live in the shadows when Hollywood is once again calling his name? The answer lies in how he views life, fame, and fulfillment after everything he's been through. Today, Tobey Maguire lives a life that couldn't be further from the glitz and chaos of early 2000s Hollywood. At 49, he's traded flashing cameras and blockbuster premieres for quiet mornings, long walks, and time with his children. After decades in an industry obsessed with visibility, Tobey seems to have mastered the rarest art of all, disappearing with grace. In Los Angeles, he's occasionally spotted, usually in casual clothes, sunglasses on, blending into the crowd. There are no bodyguards, no entourage, no sense of urgency. Friends describe him as completely at peace. He still works in film, but not in the way fans might expect. Through his production company, Material Pictures, Tobey has shifted his focus behind the camera, helping develop projects that matter to him rather than chasing fame. One of the biggest misconceptions about Tobey's disappearance is that Hollywood rejected him. The truth is much simpler. He rejected Hollywood. After years of witnessing the politics, power games, and manipulation that come with fame, he decided to step away on his own terms. He saw what fame did to people, one friend once said. He didn't want it to consume him. Tobey's relationship with fame has always been complicated. He's never been the type to chase the spotlight. Even at the height of his career, he was known for being reclusive and intensely private. He once admitted that the constant attention made him anxious. "Everyone thinks fame makes you happy," he said in an old interview. But the truth is, it often makes you feel like you don't own your life anymore. These days, Tobey spends most of his time with his two children, Ruby and Otis, from his marriage to jewelry designer Jennifer Meyer. Though the couple divorced in 2020, they remain close friends and co-parents. By all accounts, fatherhood changed Tobey in ways that acting never could. Those who know him say he's a gentle, patient father who prefers a simple routine: school runs, dinners at home, quiet weekends. Yet even in his quiet retreat, Tobey has kept one foot in the creative world. He's been involved in producing thoughtful films like Pawn Sacrifice, 2014, and working on low-key independent projects. Occasionally, he'll attend industry events, always low profile, often standing near longtime friend Leonardo DiCaprio. The two still share a deep bond that goes back to their teenage years, though their paths couldn't be more different. Where DiCaprio thrives in the spotlight, Tobey has become the observer, calm, collected, and quietly wise. One of the strangest truths about Tobey Maguire's story is that his disappearance actually saved him. The fame that built him also had the power to destroy him, and he knew it. In an industry where people burn out by 30, Tobey learned to step away before he lost himself completely. He figured out early that success isn't the same as happiness, a close source once said. He wanted to live, not just perform. When fans last saw him in Spider-Man: No Way Home, his presence felt almost poetic. A man who had once carried the weight of $1 billion franchise, returning not as a superstar, but as a humble mentor. It wasn't just Peter Parker on screen. It was Tobey Maguire himself, older, calmer, finally at peace with his past. Despite rumors of future appearances, Tobey hasn't confirmed any upcoming roles. And that's exactly how he likes it. He doesn't need to be seen to feel relevant. His legacy as the original Spider-Man, the one who brought heart and humanity to the superhero genre, is already sealed. For millions, no one will ever replace him. Every now and then, photos of Tobey surface online, maybe leaving a cafe, attending a quiet gathering, or walking with friends. Each time, fans flood the comments with nostalgia and love. "We miss you, Tobey." But if you look closely, you'll see something in those photos. A peaceful smile. It's the smile of someone who doesn't need the world's approval anymore. In a town built on illusion, Tobey Maguire did the unthinkable. He chose real life over a spotlight. He walked away, not because he failed, but because he finally understood what success truly meant. Maybe we don't see Tobey Maguire anymore because, for the first time in his life, he doesn't want to be seen. And that, in a world that never stops watching, might be the most powerful move of all.